Hi everybody, it's Amanda Pratt, licensed clinical social worker with Imagine Life Therapy, and today is Relationship Thursday. Today I'm actually going to be answering a question that was posted by someone on my Facebook friends list yesterday, and the question was, what's the psychological reasoning behind having a hard time accepting a compliment? And there's a couple different things that could be at play if someone gives you a compliment and you are having a really hard time accepting it, or it makes you feel uncomfortable, or it almost puts like a negative view or negative thoughts in your head. So the first thing that happens if we have a hard time accepting a compliment, or the first thing that could be happening, is that you might have low self-esteem. So sometimes, whether we realize it or not, we could have a negative view of ourselves. Now, this can be consciously, where you could easily be able to say, you know what, you're right, I don't really see myself that highly, I don't feel like I'm that smart, I don't feel like I'm that pretty. But sometimes it's a subconscious thing that we don't realize that we think about ourselves, or that we don't feel about ourselves until something like this comes up. So one of the reasons why we think that it's self-esteem is because when someone says something nice to you, and usually what I tell people is to look at what the compliment is and how it makes you feel and who it's coming from. Those three things can play a factor there. So depending on what the compliment is, if someone is complimenting you on your looks, for example, and it gives you this bad negative feeling inside, sometimes it's because maybe we have a belief, whether it's conscious or subconscious, that we aren't pretty or we aren't attractive in some way. And what happens when someone gives us a compliment and we don't believe it is that essentially we're experiencing what's called cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is something that happens when we have a core belief, or a belief that either something happens that goes against that, or we act in a way that goes against that, and then we feel uncomfortable. And so when someone compliments your looks, if you have a subconsciously, you don't believe that about yourself, it gives you this feeling of uneasiness because it's going against what your core belief is and challenging that. And so sometimes it is only about certain things. So you might be confident in how you look, and you might think, you know what, I do look good today. I put a lot of effort into it and I'm rocking it. Then you might not have that uncomfortable feeling. But if someone at work compliments you on a job well done on a certain project, or maybe you're a creative person and someone compliments your art, and you feel that uncomfortable feeling, then maybe what you're experiencing is that you don't feel good enough at a certain thing, or you don't feel smart, or you don't feel competent at a certain task. So definitely look at what kind of compliment it is, who it's coming from, and how it's making you feel, because it could be that you maybe need to work on some self-esteem stuff around that particular subject. And so something I like to tell people is, don't worry, that's something that we can always work on, is building confidence and building our self-esteem at certain things. And what we do is we just do specific practices and tasks around that, or we try to reframe the compliment in our minds so it's something we can accept. So for example, if someone says, you know, I really like your outfit today, you look so good. In my mind, if I have low self-esteem around how I look, I might instantly be like, oh my gosh, I look fat today. Like, I totally don't look good. I don't know what you're thinking. Instead, in my mind, I might reframe it as, you know, this person is taking time out to compliment me on how I look, and I did put a lot of effort into what I wore today, and so then I might say, thank you, I really appreciate that compliment. Sometimes we can say things in response that show gratitude for them being nice to us, but not necessarily say whether or not we agree with it, right? So that brings me to another possible reason why people feel uncomfortable getting compliments, and it has to do with cultural factors. So in some cultures, it's acceptable to compliment people, and that sometimes depends on age, it depends on gender, and it depends on your level of comfort with that person, the type of relationship that you have. Like, for example, in certain cultures, it might not be okay to compliment someone that you work with, but it might be okay to compliment someone of your same gender. It might not be okay to compliment someone of the opposite gender in certain cultures. And I know in our culture, especially, sometimes if you get a compliment and you say thanks, sometimes that can be perceived as like bragging or being too full of yourself, or like we're supposed to turn down a compliment and be humble. Oh no, that's not me. And so we almost can be rewarded at times culturally for not accepting a compliment. So something I want to challenge you with, whether it's because you have low self-esteem, or there's an area of your life that you're not as confident in, or whether it's cultural factors, a couple things I tell people is to show gratitude for a compliment, because one of the things we know about giving and receiving is that giving is just as important as receiving. If someone is giving you something and you say, no, I can't accept that, you are denying that person the joy and the happiness that comes from being able to give of yourself to someone else. And if we don't receive that with gratitude, then we're actually doing that person a disservice, because they are wanting to do something for you. They're wanting to give you a compliment. And so the best thing we can do is receive it with gratitude. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree with that thing. You may still be working on whether or not you agree with that thing. But we can say, thank you, I really appreciate the compliment. And that's always kind of a neutral thing. It doesn't sound like you're coming off as bragging, like, you're right, I do look good today. But it's just showing gratitude for that person taking time out to extend something in a giving way to you. So it's all in how you look at it. And, I think it can tell you a lot about yourself also. If you receive a compliment in a certain area and it makes you feel uncomfortable, kind of sit with that and say, okay, maybe this is an area I need to work on, and how can I do that? And there are very specific ways that you can grow as a person and boost your self-confidence in every area of your life. So if there's any specific examples that anyone would like, just go ahead and comment below on this video, and I will be happy to go into more detail about specific examples of things you can do to grow your self-confidence and your self-esteem in certain areas. So hopefully this answered some questions for you and taught you something maybe you didn't know. And happy Relationship Thursday, and hopefully that helps boost your relationships or helps you grow in your relationships in some way. So have a great rest of your week and weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.